What you can control is how hard you work, is how many times you're going to sacrifice to achieve your goal. Those are the only things that I ever worried about.
He was called too short, too small, too slow.
Well, for me, it was insulting, motivating. You add another chip to your shoulder. Okay, they don't think I could do that. Let me prove them wrong.
But he became the perfect Philadelphia overachiever. Eagles legend Brian Westbrook, today on The Pulse.
Hustle, work, grind. Don't allow your humble beginnings to slow you down and make you think in your mind that you can't be successful.
Hey guys, welcome to The Pulse. You know, we do this every week, bringing in interesting people doing interesting things in all different fields, but this one's different for me. All right, so I know you're watching nationally, but for my Philly people, you know that we're different as it relates to football, as it relates to our teams, as it relates to our sports. So when they told me we could get Brian Westbrook in the building, it changed my whole presentation, man. I appreciate you coming in.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
I want to start with the book,
okay,
because I think the book kind of talks about your history and your experiences. So you got a new book just out, The Mouse Who Played Football. Tell me about this. Why did you decide to do this?
Well, the book is some of my best work. Some of the things that I love the most about the book is actually what's happening in my life right now. And so when my co-author, Leslie Van Arsdale, came to me and said, listen, I have a book idea. Let's talk about it. The book is basically around your life. Yeah. You know, let's talk about it. And being 42, having 3 kids, 9, 5, and 3, Bria, Brian, and Brielle. At this point in my life, I'm reading stories to the kids at night. I want those stories to have meaning. I want my kids to understand there's much more to life than playing and crayons and things like that. And so when she came to me with the book and the story, and that was loosely based around me, there were so many things that I wanted to put in the book. There were so many opportunities in my life to learn from for myself, and I wanted to share those with everyone. And so we came up with the book, and we're super excited to have it. So
loosely based on you. I mean, it's a mouse, so that's why it's kind of loosely based. Yeah. But in a lot of ways, at least the message, it seems like, was kind of your career. All through your career, you're too small to do this, is what they were telling you.
Well, yeah. So it started way back when I started playing football and sports. They always said, you're the smallest guy on the team. You're too small to do this. You're too small to do that. You're only going to be this. And my coach back in high school simply said to me, and I know a lot of people have heard this, it doesn't matter the size of the dog in the fight. It's the matter of the size of the fight in the dog. Mm-hmm. How much do you want it? What's your desire? How hard are you willing to work for it? And when we wrote this book, it was simple. We wanted to make sure that our children, not just my children and Leslie boys, but everyone understands that don't allow someone else to dictate to you what you can achieve, what you're going to be. The only way that things should be dictated to you is yourself. You have the opportunity to determine exactly what you're going to be in life, how you're going to do it, and how far you're going to go.
I love the message. And one of the things we focus on the show is how you use your voice for good and empower people or what have you. And now, you know, after a bunch of records in high school, college, and then the pros, you know, after Pro Bowl appearances, after 1,300-yard rushing, like after all of that, it's easy to sit back and go, so your size doesn't limit you. We could go. Did you believe it all through that time? Because no disrespect, you're not a big football guy. You're obviously in shape. But you're a little guy to be out there having 300-pound people fall on you.
Yeah.
You know, did you believe it even starting in high school?
Well, I'll tell you, it's hard to make a living. It's a hard way to make a living when you have guys like Dawkins and Jeremiah Trotter hitting you every single day. Talking about big guys, 6'2", 6'3", 250-plus pounds. Many times I was outweighed and, of course, much smaller than a lot of different guys. But, yeah, I did believe it. And, again, that comes from internal. And we have the ability to control that. I tell my kids all the time, only control the things and worry about the things that you can control. You can't control how tall you are. You can't control how much you weigh for the most part. What you can control is how hard you work. What you can control is how many times you're going to sacrifice to achieve your goal. You have the ability to control those things. And so those are the only things that I ever worried about.
So you believe that going back, even NFL?
I did believe it. You know, so when I was in high school, going into my senior year, I tore my ACL. Okay. So prior to that, I was being recruited by almost every school in the country. Then every school in the country, except for Villanova, said, we don't want you. We're not going to give you a scholarship. So Villanova was one of the schools that, in my mind, were the only one that recruited me. The only ones that said, we'll give you an opportunity to heal, number one, but also come back and play football again. And so I said, okay, Villanova's a great school. It's a great academic school. It's a great school that you can network after school. At that point, the NFL was not in my dreams. I wanted to find a way to be educated and then get a job. After a couple of years at Villanova, things were working out, and people began to start noticing the things that I was able to do on the football field, and then the opportunity in the NFL popped up.
But then when it was time to go to the NFL, the you're too small in a lot of ways came back at you.
Yeah.
At that point, and they third round pick, was that encouraging, motivating, or to some levels insulting, motivating? Because it's like, for real? Y'all didn't just see everything I just did?
Well, for me, it was insulting, motivating. It was kind of one of those things that you add another chip to your shoulder. Okay, they don't think I could do that. They don't think I could do this. Let me prove them wrong. I'll never forget, after breaking records, having the most yards in NCAA history in college, I went to the Senior Bowl, which is a collection of the best seniors in the country. You're talking about from Miami, Florida State, Ohio State, some of the biggest schools in the country. And I practiced all week, little guy from Villanova, practicing hard against some of the best schools, best players in the country. And we get to the game day, and the running back coach, and I'll never forget this, I carried this with me throughout my NFL career. The running back coach comes to me and said, listen, people only think you can be a third down back. People only think that you can be a special teams player. So that's when we're going to play you in the All-Star game. Now, just imagine an All-Star game where everyone gets the opportunity to play, everyone gets the opportunity to show what you can do. He's telling me you're only going to be limited to these things. And so I took that again as another insult. I took that again as another opportunity to add things, another chip to my shoulder, because I wanted to prove those people wrong.
Next on The Pulse, from sports hero to author, Brian Westbrook only knows how to be authentic.
This book, the way that I speak, is from experience. It's not something that I thought of, this is truly something that I live.
Welcome back to The Pulse. We all knew he was an outstanding football player, but we're finding out he's so much more. Let's get back to the conversation with Brian Westbrook. Am I right in reading that you were the first who did 1,000 yards rushing and 1,000 yards receiving in college?
Yeah.
And they were still saying, go be a special teams player.
What's crazy is, so I did over 1,000 yards rushing, over 1,000 yards receiving in that season. I had 950 yards of return yards. So, I mean, when you think about it, on top of that, I had over 3,000 plus yards from scrimmage during that season. It was just a great opportunity, great year for me. But yeah, they still were saying, hey, well, he's just a little guy from Villanova.
Do you think that it helps that before the book, before the career, there's all those steps of you actually showing you did it? Like you lived it. You're not just writing about it. We talked about the Senior Bowl. But then the Eagles draft you, and you still, you came in and it was grinding on special teams. Yep. I think you threw a touchdown before you ran for one.
That's right.
So do you think that helps? Like, you pointing to, I'm not just talking about this, I lived this.
Well, the examples that young people and old people like myself want to see is people that have actually done it. Don't tell me how to make $1 million if you don't even have $1 million yourself. You have a great idea. Well, show me how you've used this idea to help yourself. And so, listen, this book, the way that I speak, is from experience. It's not something that I thought of, this is truly something that I live. I've been doubted my entire life. You're not going to be able to do this. You're not going to be able to do that. You're too small. You're not fast enough. One of my recruiters, the guys that recruited me out of Villanova to come to the Eagles, I just talked to him recently. He said, listen, you were always hurt. You were slow. You were small. And he said, I still recruited you because I knew that you had the heart.
I got to ask you about this because you just mentioned the guy who recruited you said you were slow.
Yes.
You were small. I thought, and I'm a fan, watched all the games, and I'm sitting there going, that guy's quick. Yeah. Like, hit the hole, explode, like everyone's a home run hitter. Then I went back and looked at your 40 times when you were recruiting. You didn't run a good 40 times. Like at your size. Mm-hmm. So I need to give you a chance for the record. What happened?
Well, I'll tell you. So so you have the combine. It was in Indianapolis at the time. Now it was in the slow turf. Now these young guys today are running on something that is totally different. Everyone's running a 4.3, 4.4. But back in the day, so when you run the 40, you're running, and I didn't know at the end there's like a little piece of like fishing wire. At the end to signify when you're done. That's when they stop the clock. And so I'm running. You run 2 times. I'm running, and you run with your head down for the first 30 or so yards. Then you pick your head up. And when I put my head up, I see this fishing line. And I did this twice. And I was shocked, and I stopped. Both times, right? And I'll never forget this. I felt bad because people bring up that 4.5 all the time.
It was like a 4.58.
Yeah, that's slow, right?
4.6.
So let me tell you. I came back at Villanova, ran the 40 again for my pro day, and ran a 4.38. So I'm much faster than a 4.5. But when you pull up Wikipedia, they're saying, hey, you ran a 4.8. I'll tell you this: there were rare times in NFL that I got caught from behind.
I looked that number up and went,
yes,
there's something wrong.
Well, but here's the thing: when NFL scouts saw that, they were like, yep, not a first round pick, not a second round pick. And I don't know if he's going to be a 3rd round pick. Maybe he can slide to the 4th round and I can pick you. Again, for me, that was adding chips to my shoulder. That was adding opportunities for me to overcome things. And, unfortunately, in our world right now, our children, they're trying to avoid conflict. They're trying to avoid opportunities that don't always fall into their favor. I'm like, let's run to it. Let's solve this problem. Let's fix it. Let's find a way that we can use these problems as something that we can use as a stepping stone so that once we get over them, once we get over that adversity, those hurdles, now we can be very successful. And that's what my life has been all about. And that's what I think our young children need to understand. When you're young, when you're middle-aged, and as you get older, that always is happening. And you just have to find a way to get over those hurdles.
I love we have on the show, particularly athletes, entertainers to some level as well. People hit 40 and start talking about their old.
I know. That's because when I woke up this morning, I'm like, oh, my knees, my back.
That irritates those of us who have gotten, you're like, this dude, 40 years old, been in the NFL. But on that theme, so you come in, you're playing the NFL. You do that at a really young age, in your 20s. Mm-hmm. You go through. And then at some point in your 30s, and the injuries do start to add up.
Of course.
At some point, and then it's done.
Yeah.
And you haven't hit 40 years old. Yeah.
Early 30s.
Yeah. And that part of your life is done. Mm-hmm. And that's the part that I don't think people get. I certainly don't get. What's that like?
For so long, you have identified as an athlete. And for most of that time, a professional athlete, one of the best athletes in the world. Out of the 1,500 athletes, professionals, as far as playing football in the world, you're one of the better athletes. And so at the end of your career, you're like, this is what I'm known for. And now that's over. Now people are looking at you like, oh, that's the old guy that used to play football. That's how they look at you. So you go through this phase called identity foreclosure. And so that part of your career is over. And now you have to figure out what's next. What's the next thing that you want to do? What's the next thing that you can possibly be successful at? And for me, it was finding my wife. For me, it was getting married and then having children. I wanted to do that. That was something that I absolutely look forward to. And that's kind of where I'm at now. I'm a father. I'm a businessman. I'm an author. And so for me, it's all about how can I do right now? How can I help to show my children the best path?
Next, how sports figures deal with the challenges of retirement.
If you're not making millions of dollars, then you better stop spending millions of dollars. You better figure out a way to budget your money, save your money, be smart about it, make good decisions.
You read about somebody signing this contract, right? And it's huge amounts of money to all of us who are sitting there. And it's all relative, because it was huge amounts of money when you were doing it, but it wasn't huge like the kind of contracts they're selling today.
Contracts, yeah.
You know, so you still read about it. Do people miss, I'm making up numbers, $10 million, which I'm going, oh my God, it's $10 million. But it's $10 million that stops coming in at age 30
of course.
Something. And that's if you're lucky enough and talented enough to be one of the ones who gets that. I wonder if that transition is tough because you're always the guy, who had millions and millions of dollars. But at 33, 34, 35, you still have to figure out what you're going to do with the next 50, 60 years financially. Is that a challenge when you transition away from it?
Well, when you talk about the money that you make in the NFL, millions of dollars every year, and for so many people, so many athletes, you're spending millions of dollars every year, right? And so the thought process has to change. If you're not making millions of dollars, then you better stop spending millions of dollars. You better figure out a way to budget your money, save your money, be smart about it, make good decisions. And so, unfortunately, so many NFL players, professional athletes say, okay, I'm making $10 million a year. I'm going to spend $1 million, right? And so really that $10 million quickly gets to $5 million after taxes. You spend a couple $1 million here and there. You give away a couple $1 million. And really, at the end, you don't have very much money. Now, we're talking about millions of dollars, right? And so we're not, in the real world, this is not, this is a lot of doggone money. But for athletes, they spend it. We spend it all the time. You have to be smart with your money. You have to invest wisely. You have to also save for a rainy day. We'll never be in a position, most of us, to make millions of dollars again. We'll never be in that position again. So you have to make good decisions with your money.
So you get it. As one of the guys, and it wasn't you, but you've seen it. Like you've seen those stories.
I've received phone calls from guys that I either played against or played with. Like, hey, man, can you throw me a couple $1,000 bucks? And I'm like, well, you played in the NFL for 10 years. You made, you had a couple good contracts. Wow. Why is it that you have no money? And so I'm having these conversations like, listen, I have no problem helping you, but I don't want to give you money that you're going to run through. I want to help you earn money in a different way. How can I help you have sustainable money?
So that's a good segue, a good transition, because you are you're Brian Westbrook, the athlete. You're Brian Westbrook, the author, but you're Brian Westbrook, the entrepreneur and the businessman. Yeah. And part of what you're doing now that I was reading about is doing just that. Like you're helping athletes get involved in tech and get involved in, people, but athletes get involved in these other kind of businesses that can help sustain them. And tell us about that part of your life.
Well, I'm a part of a group called the Underdog Venture Team, and it's really a branding company, but we have venture studio qualities. And so, our company is really a branding company that goes out and helps other companies and other business people brand their business, market. We help with your sponsorship. So we try to help bring partners to you so that you can make more money in your business. The other, when we talk about venture side, is we take startup companies and we want to help jumpstart them. We want to help those companies. And so in order for us to do that, we have to add value. We have to add money. Now, 66% of our startups will either be women-led or minority-led startups. So it's our focus to make sure that the companies, the people that normally have not been able to get the funding, normally have not been able to find people to invest in them, get that investment. Someone else helped me. Now I have to give back to other people. And that's one of the bigger things as well.
Coming up, I'm the host, but I'm still a fan.
Never done this, but I'm going to do it today. They tell me you're not supposed to do this because, this is unprofessional. I want people to know
Here we go.
I got my Westbrook jersey right here. You have the foundation. You have a horse farm?
I do have a horse farm in Maryland, yeah.
Okay. So tell us about the foundation. And that kind of speaks to, you're opening up eyes for people to experience things they haven't otherwise experienced.
Well, listen, I bought my horse farm 17 years ago. So 2005, I go on a trail ride, and I'm saying, I just enjoyed the trail ride. It was peaceful. I was in the middle of my career. I was stressed out because football is, what have you done for me lately? You had a 100-yard game, then you had a 25-yard game, and then you suck because you only had 25 yards in that game. And so it's about what have you done for me lately? I go on this trail ride back in Maryland, and I leave that trail ride with a sense of peace. You're out in nature with an animal that you can't control other than the reins that you have in your hand, and you're out in nature. And for me, it was just peaceful. So I called my realtor and said, listen, I want to buy a horse farm. Now, I was young. I had a bunch of money. It wasn't the best investment that I possibly could, especially at the time. But she found a horse farm for me. We operated that horse farm for 12 years as a boarding facility. The calling was pushing us. And so we said we have to develop the Brian Westbrook Foundation And we wanted to use a farm as a place where kids could come to and be renewed, be refreshed. And now our farm is 20 minutes outside of DC. And when you think about DC, really, really diverse community, but there's a lot of underrepresented minority kids that have never seen a horse, that never have been to a farm. And we wanted to give them the opportunity.
We end the show, and we've been doing this the entire show, but we end every show with use your voice for good. I don't know if it's your foundation, if it's just a message you want to give to young people, kind of your last word as to how you're using your voice for good.
Well, you know, I think using your voice is not a one-time thing. I think it's a continual thing. I think the message for all of our young people is very simple. Believe in yourself. Don't allow anyone else to determine your future. You have the ability to determine your future. That's not necessarily determine where you start. You can start from humble beginnings, but you can become very, very successful. And that's what this world is about. You have opportunity. Seek out those opportunities and find a way to be successful. Don't allow your humble beginnings to slow you down and make you think in your mind that you can't be successful. You can be super successful no matter where you start at. All you have to do is find your way, hustle, work, grind. Our young people, unfortunately, they're afraid of grinding. Get dirty, get in the weeds, grind. If you're willing to do that, you can be successful in this world.
We're going to leave it there, but I've never done this, but I'm going to do it today. They tell me you're not supposed to do this because, you know, this is unprofessional. I want people to know.
There we go.
I got my Westbrook jersey right here. As we wrap up, you sign my jersey
Absolutely.
for me. I expected to really enjoy spending time with Brian Westbrook. I'm an Eagles fan, Philadelphia born and raised, but it was more than that. I appreciate his insight, his motivation, the stories that he shared. Remember that you can always go to places wherever podcasts are available and subscribe to The Pulse with Bill Anderson to hear the entire interview. We appreciate you doing that. You get some more information. And follow me on social media at BillAFox29. Until we meet again next week, thanks so much for watching. Whenever you can, use your voice for good, and have a good one.